It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Welcome back. Welcome back to Her Success Story, and welcome to our new listeners who are just chiming in today, checking us out, giving us a first listen. This is Her Success Story, where we talk about gutsy women leaders. This is not just business. We are women. We are whole lives. We are huge human beings. And today, I'm really excited to have a special guest. I had mentioned in another episode that I was recently at a New Media Summit, and this was this event, conference all around podcasting and all around people who had podcasts. And I met some amazing people who I really wanted to highlight on Her Success Story. And Jolen is one of them. Jolen Philbrook was diagnosed with a rare type of breast cancer back in 2008. At the same time she had cancer, she also went through a custody suit with no income. Oh my goodness, talk about things coming at you left, right, and sideways. Then in 2010, Jolen survived kidney cancer. Today, in 2018, I am bringing to you an author who has 2 books out there, a woman who's created programs, who has broken through, and has guts that I admire and look up to. One of her books, when I first met her, I was like, "Oh my God, you have a book on the Gratitude Project." I was like, "I'm all about gratitude. We have to talk about this." And then she said, "Well, my new book is From Tears to Triumph." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you just touched my heart. We have to talk about this." So today, welcome Jolen Philbrook. Thank you for taking time out of, I know, a very busy calendar. You're out in California. You're coming to me on East Coast time, and you made it happen. So hello, and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Ivy. I'm really excited for being here, and I'm excited to get started on the call. I can't wait to chat and see what unfolds.
So you went through what, in no uncertain terms, many women would consider, "Oh my God, I've woken up and I'm in hell."
Yeah, this is for sure.
I'm not going to shortcut it. I'm a blatant New Yorker, but you know, in reading and learning more about your story and chatting with you and meeting you in person, I was like, "Oh my God, you're here X amount of years later." And how do you have, like, you know, arrows coming from you in all directions, and you triumph from there?
It's kind of a long story, but I'll make it really short.
Okay.
In the court case, in the beginning, we were happily married. Everything was great till his mom died. And then he went from family man to Hugh Hefner. And it was as if his personality changed. He went from Jekyll to Hyde.
Oh,
and
wow.
My favorite thing was to call him the Wicked Witch of the West, because he was just attacking verbally. It was getting very dangerous. And so I was living in fear. And then my favorite thing at night was to cry myself to sleep, rehash the lies in the court case, just believe everything was true. And one night I said to myself, "That's it. I'm not crying anymore." And just by making that decision, I'm not going to cry, I had to sit there and think, wow, that, it takes a lot of energy to keep rehashing everything. And I thought, what am I going to do? I said, I'm going to transform my life. And I remembered having a premonition dream that I was on a stage talking to an audience of women. And I said, I survived breast cancer. So I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to join Toastmasters and just follow the breadcrumbs and see what unfolds. And
Okay.
yeah, and through that process, I had to learn how to change my thinking, how to shift my emotions, how to focus on the positive, how to look out the window every day. I'd look at a tree and I'd say, oh, thank goodness I'm alive. Look at that beautiful tree. Look at the bird. I mean, I just went
So
into
you
it.
really tapped into the simple beauty in life.
Yes,
You
I had to do
you
that and go
simplified.
into gratitude to help shift my mindset. Yes.
Okay, got it. And from there, okay, so then as you start transforming and you start finding the simple beauties, the gratitude of reconnecting to ourselves.
Yeah. And also I was really depressed, not knowing I was grieving. Um, I I had a mastectomy and I was on chemo and I did not know how much it would put me into a tailspin of depression and grief. And one day I was like, I'm tired of being depressed. I want to be happy again. So I cut a photograph of a happy woman out of a magazine and I put her in my kitchen counter. And I said,
Nice.
that's new me. I'm happy. So that's how I practiced shifting. And then I had to practice smiling and laughing to practice being happy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then what happens next? Okay, so you start going through this process, or
Oh,
and hats off to you to start realizing it, to pull yourself there.
yes. And a lot of it was paying attention to my thoughts and feelings. And I learned a technique that um, every time, see, what happens was your mind rattles and your mind thinks so fast you can't catch all your thoughts, but you can pay attention to your emotions. So you know if you're happy or you're sad. And there's all these other emotions in between: anger, fear, all those kind of negative emotions. I always glump them in as sadness. Then there's joy, there's gratitude, there's happiness. I just clump them all into happiness. So I'd ask myself, am I happy or am I sad? And then I would practice breathing through whatever negative emotion I was feeling. And I learned that it would peak. It'd last for about 45 seconds. I'd keep breathing and I would just tell myself to release it, release it, release it. And what I found is the more that I did this technique, it's like an onion peeling the layers off. The anger and the resentment started dissipating. And then I could get to gratitude and happiness easier.
Okay, repeat that technique again.
Okay, so the technique is super easy. First, you tap into whatever you're feeling. So let's say it's anger or resentment. You recognize the anger. And sometimes in the beginning, I didn't even know what I felt because I shoved my emotions down so deep. I could just recognize it was negative. I said, okay,
Okay.
it's negative. Breathe into it. And as you breathe into it, I would tell myself a word over and over, like release, release, release. And I would just breathe and release, breathe and release. And then all of a sudden I'd feel this shift and I'd feel better. And then I would stop doing the process. And, it takes about 45 seconds to a minute to stick with the feeling and breathe through it.
So in thinking about busy women leaders, right? We have
Mhm.
executives, we have business owners. So it's not unusual for us to get tossed around a little bit in emotion in a day, right? Things that don't always go well. Sometimes things that, things go well in threes, they don't go well in threes, right?
Right.
Um, so when they don't go well in those threes, like one thing hits you, the next, then the next. Anger and resentment, sometimes it's anger about the situation, sometimes it's resentment of like, why me? um there's got to be an easier way, like, so you slow down and you start breathing into this feeling that's coming up for you.
Yes. And what I learned, there was a man, I learned this process intuitively, you could say. And then
Okay.
later on, a couple years later, a friend of mine told me there was a man that, this was back maybe 50s time era, 1950s.
Got it.
The doctor sent him home because they did not know how to do a bypass, a heart bypass yet. And they sent him home to die. And he sat in his recliner and said, I don't want to die. I'm going to heal myself. So he sat in his recliner, and all he did was whatever emotion came up, he breathed through it and he let it go. And he ended up healing himself. And so the technique that this man designed is called the release technique. And at the time I learned it, it was just like given to me intuitively. So I was at the river because I lived in a small little mountain town by Lake Tahoe. And I was watching the water at the river and how the water flows. It does not let anything block it and stop it. Even if there's a rock or a twig, it will flow with the river. And I go, wow, our emotions are supposed to flow through us. We hang on to them because we feel there was an injustice done. So if we're like the water and the emotion is supposed to flow through us, how do I get the emotion out? The only way I could think of at that moment was through my breath. So at the river, I'm sitting there practicing, watching the water flow over the rocks and the boulders and the twigs. And I kept breathing. And then I started feeling better. And I said, okay, so every time I feel negative now, I'm just going to breathe through it. And I started paying attention to the time because a couple times it was really heavy and I had to cry and work it out. But it typically just is like a volcano. You feel it
Got
at
it.
a peak and then it subsides.
So tell our audience, um, you from the developing the technique, getting yourself number one, healthy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You've now taken this whole process into prosperity. I'm curious, you and I, like, we're chatting about health, wealth, and prosperity and the correlations and how we play here. So, I'll always say when we were 5, 10, 15 years old and when we were graduating college, most of us, or very few of us, are actually doing what we thought we were going to do. We've evolved. We've taken our careers, our businesses, our lives into whole new places. You've done that. Where are you now? Like, tell me about your business today and what you're able to develop out from what was truly a tragedy in your life. You have built a thriving business around. I think this is awesome.
Yeah. After the cancer episode, I thought, well, if I can do this for myself, I want to see if I can do it for other people. So I started teaching classes, and I noticed that my technique worked in every area, like health, wealth, and relationship. But I was divorced and I wasn't really happy in the relationship arena, so I didn't want to go that road. And health,
You're like, yeah, okay, been there, done that.
yeah, I've been there, done that. And health, man, I just got out of that one. I don't want to go there. So there's only one left, which is prosperity. And I was typically working with entrepreneurs and they kept wanting more money. And so I kept thinking, well, okay, let's do this arena. I haven't done that yet. So I worked with them and I helped them clear some basic beliefs around prosperity. I taught them the clearing energy technique, which I just shared with your audience.
Right.
And then I helped them learn a 5-step scientific proven process to help them get into the alignment of whatever it is that they're looking for. And through that technique, I had a real estate agent that had no listing or income for 2 years. And we worked on his mindset and clearing this negative emotion. And he got a listing for $1 million. And then in the next week, it sold. So I'm like, okay, I know this works. And then somebody else was really kind of just barely getting by. And they kept finding money here, there, and everywhere in the weirdest places. They inherited a motorhome and they found money there, and they found money in drawers. And by the time they got done finding all this money in weird places that they forgot they put it, it ended up to like $3,000. And she was like really shocked. So it's about what I learned in that cancer experience is it doesn't matter if it's relationship, health, or prosperity. Typically women, my opinion, I did a survey in the hospitals and the doctor's offices, and I asked these women, what happened 1.5 to 2 years before you got breast cancer? And they all went through a divorce except one where her brother died. And I go, oh my God, they all have a broken heart.
Oh my.
And they had to go to court and fight, and they're being put down and bullied and threatened. Now, if we take this into the workforce, right, we have women leaders that are being threatened and bullied and manipulated in work. And they take it into their heart, and they're storing these little hurts there. Well, if they don't breathe and get these hurts out, they get stored as resentment. This resentment could turn into a dis-ease, and typically women die of heart attacks, lung cancer, and breast cancer. So I really feel if they work on their heart area, clear those negative beliefs, hurts, that they can move forward easier in their business. And then if they've gotten hurt, they might have this fear of rejection. They won't put themselves out there in business like they could because they're afraid of getting hurt again. So those are some of my ahas I've learned on the road of.
So, in your work, okay. Oh my God, my mind's going with so many questions, and I know we always try to keep our shows that people can touch and like listen briefly. So we do about a 30-minute here. I part of me like wants to say, what's the greatest success today? Taking away getting through the health issues and stuff, but as a businesswoman, what is some of the greatest successes you have seen in your life today? And any relationships that you think have contributed to it?
I would say for me, I'm just really happy. And when I'm really happy, my life flows and things work magically, you could say. It's like the opportunities appear or the right people come into my life. And I don't put all this stress and anxiety on my life like I used to. It's like I just kind of relax. I feel meditation is really important.
Mm.
It keeps me calm. And if I don't meditate, I just feel off that day. It's hard to explain, but
Actually, I'm going to jump in there because I happen to agree with you. I think meditation is incredibly important, and for businessmen and women, business people, for all of us, the importance. And I actually just did, I was doing executive coaching for a client, senior director, high up in a global organization. And in our work, we touched on meditation. And one of the exercises I gave him is before I personally use Insight Timer because I love a good guided meditation from my dance days. I got addicted to them. And Insight Timer has a 1-minute meditation in one of their things. And I said, how about when you're feeling you need to go into these tougher meetings? How about when you're feeling you have to have a meeting with somebody and or that day is just catching up with you and you're starting to feel your throat constrict? You know, you just turn your desk chair around, close your eyes, and you do a 1-minute meditation. And he was like, I'm game. He goes, I've meditated before. He goes, I'm game to try this. And he came back and he's like, Ivy, this is putting a whole different pace on my day. It's giving, you know, when things start getting to me in 60 seconds, I can stop that freight train. And this is the same thing you're saying.
Yes. And if I'm going into an important meeting, I just go one step further. So I go into a quiet meditative state. I imagine myself in the room already there, and I imagine myself saying whatever it is I need to say. Mm-hmm. And typically I do it in the car before I go into the meeting. And so now I've already rehearsed it, you could say, in my mind. So when I go into the meeting, now I'm more confident, I'm more secure, I feel stronger in my power. And then the meeting just runs like magically smoother. All the hiccups have been replayed out in my mind, you could say. So it really helps to just pause, you know, go into a quiet space, breathe and relax, and then kind of do a quick rehearsal before you go in.
Like it. And again, totally important. Just totally important. So, tips. What do you have to say for our listeners? I can go in so many directions right now, ladies and gentlemen. I have to tell you, my mind's going up a mile a minute, and there's so many different directions. But truly, in being clear, tips for our listeners. What do you think? What do we do? Out of all the ideas and steps here?
So your mindset is very important. So by practicing telling yourself great things like I'm empowered, I can do this, I'm good enough, those really help. But listening to your emotions and feeling that angst and feeling that stress and breathing through it, and even doing, like you were suggesting, a 1-minute meditation to get the body back calm and peaceful. Because when you're in that peaceful state, you can actually think and function better. When you're stressed and full of anxiety and worried and your body's shaken from, too much adrenaline, you're not going to be as sharp and you're not going to make as clear decisions. So it's the opposite. If you can get to a peaceful state, you make better decisions and you're more productive.
So on that note, you're a best-selling author. You have the Gratitude Book Project, celebrating 365 days of gratitude and reflection. Your newest book is From Tears to Triumph. How do our listeners find out more about you, stay in touch with you, reach out to you?
My website's the easiest. You could go to www.jolenphilbrook.com. And I also have a free gift there. It's called Money, Wealth, and Abundance. And it's a nice little meditative MP3 that you can listen to that helps shift your mindset.
So there's a huge amount to talk about mindset. There's a huge amount to talk about mindfulness. I truly believe, I asked Jolen to be here because I truly, truly believe in great business come from great practicality, great foundation and structure, and a strong mindset, a mindfulness in how we live, how we breathe, how we go about our days to bring the greatest fulfillment. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we live one life right now. Business, career is part of it. Bring a whole life existence, bring joy to yourself fully. You know, the biggest takeaway for me today, Jolen, is when you said, I just got down to the simple, natural things. And I set myself up today with looking at daffodils. So thank you for bringing that spark of joy to myself. Check out jolenphilbrook.com. It's JolenPhilbrook.com. You will see the correct spelling and a great link to reach Jolen in the show notes. So check them out. Do not forget to leave a review on iTunes. What do you think? What do you want more of? Do you want a little more on mindfulness? Do you want a little bit more on other information? We can only respond if you let us know. What do you like with what we're doing? What's working for you and what's not? Jolen, thank you so much for getting up early on West Coast time and joining me this morning, and wishing everybody a fabulous day, week, month, journey. Stay tuned for more of Her Success Story. We drop every Monday.